Hi, welcome back to the channel. I'm Traben, and in today's video, we'll be looking at everything I plan to read for the month of October. So October is spooky month, Halloween time, a lot of opportunities this year so far for reading scary books. And if you've been watching the channel for any length of time, you know that I do tend to gravitate towards the horror books. So I've read a good number of them this year. My wife was asking me what I was going to do for October because I've already read so many horror books this year, and we are not at a loss for scary books. So for this month, I'm not doing any kind of readathon or any book club books or anything like that. It was basically just cobbling together all the horror books and gothic stories that I haven't had time for up to this point in the year, and deciding that this month will be the month that I read all of these. There are still a few non-horror books that I'm going to look at this month for various reasons, and so we'll cover those first, and then we'll get into all the horror titles that I want to look at this month. So we're going to start off with an audiobook. Actually, I think we've got the physical copy of it, but it's Battle of the Linguist Mages. I'm listening to it on audiobook, and as of today, the 1st of October, I'm already 60% of the way through that audiobook. So that'll probably be something that I finish up in the first couple of days of this month. And it's not horror themed in the least. So that will be one that does not quite fit the theme for this month. In addition to that, there's a few others that are not going to fit the horror motif. I've got to read Silas Martyr this month because Literary Criticism Group is meeting this month for the first time, and I feel bad if I don't read the book that they're responsible for reading. We'll also be handing out copies of the play that they have this year, which is The Glass Menagerie. So it's likely that I'll reread The Glass Menagerie as well, but that's a pretty short play, so that shouldn't take too terribly long. Also, not horror, but something else I want to get finished this month is finishing up One Piece. So I read volume 91, so I've got 92, and then I have up through 101, but stateside 103, I believe, is released. And I went to a few bookstores yesterday trying to find 102 and 103 and couldn't find them. And so as soon as I can locate those, I'm going to get through those last 11 volumes or so to be current with One Piece. And then I'll probably start some actual One Piece content, favorite arcs, favorite characters, that kind of thing down the road. I wanted to finish and be current with what was released stateside before I started those conversations. All right, still talking non-horror themed things. I picked up a few more issues, a few more of the collections of Go-Go Loser Ranger from my local Kinokuniya, and want to catch up with this series as well. I'm a few volumes behind in reading it, so I've got 4 and 5 here, and I know 6 is out, so that might also be something I buy partway through the month. And then I have had Saga 9 for a while now and have not gotten it read yet, so that'll be another one that I take care of this month. And I know that volume 10 is also out, so that might be another one I pick up for this month. So I believe that covers all of the non-horror titles that I pulled for this month. So now everything else that I have is horror or horror adjacent, gothic something, has some sort of eerie element to it. We'll go through the comic books first because I just pulled a whole bunch of comics randomly, and then we'll go through the novels I plan on reading this month, including some that I'm very excited about finally getting to read. So we'll start with the comics. Several of these I know next to nothing about other than they're horror themed, and my wife picked them up. So yeah, I don't know anything other than this is horror themed and it looked cool. So we've got The Ghoul Next Door. Okay, looks sufficiently spooky. We've got Zatanna, which I don't imagine is going to be scary, but does have the magic bent, the magic element to it. So another one I'm looking forward to. The House of Lost Horizons, which is called a Sarah Jewell mystery from the world of Hellboy. So I'm only familiar with Hellboy through the movies and through a little bit of context from like the comic book subreddit. But I am interested in this one. It looks pretty cool. Horror mysteries, like that's two of my favorite genres rolled into one. So I have high hopes for this one, even though again, I have no context for what is actually going to happen here. I've got Batman, 5 Scary Stories for a Dark Night. So this is, I think, not even YA. This would be like a children's book, but I'm still going to read it. I still am going to count it towards my reads. I think this is something that is maybe right around where my oldest could probably sit through one of these, but I'm interested in seeing how they take the Batman mythos and tell scary stories with it. I can see a couple of directions you could go with it for sure. Again, I've got Goblin. Again, not much to say about a lot of these titles. They look creepy, or they look like they might have something fantasy or creepy going on with it. So it looked cool. It looked interesting. Know nothing about it. We have Stray Dogs. So Stray Dogs, the cover says, what do you get when you crossbreed Silence of the Lambs with All Dogs Go to Heaven? Well, you get Stray Dogs. And that is certainly not a mashup that I would have anticipated or expected. My wife assures me this is horror, so we'll give it a shot and we'll see how it goes. Another one that I'm looking forward to just because it seems so crazy, the way that it's being described. Another Hellboy crossover, possibly. It's from the same author, but this is Jenny Finn. I did read the back of this one, and it did seem like it has elements of like slasher, horror, and mystery, so it definitely seems up my alley, and this is one I know at least a little bit about before getting into it. And then finally, I have House of Whispers, Volume 1 and 2. So these are Sandman universe, Sandman tie-ins that look, again, from the cover alone, look sufficiently creepy and something that I know I enjoy Sandman. I know I enjoy the property that it is an offshoot of, so I have high hopes for those as well. Okay, so that takes care of all the comics that I was able to round up. Almost certainly, when we go to do our book shopping partway through the month, I will find more to pick up. But moving on to the novels, in addition to the Battle of the Linguist Mages, which I'm listening to on audiobook, I've also downloaded the Book of Living Secrets on Libby. I will probably try to find this in physical, again, when we go shopping later this month. But for now, I'll be reading it through my app, and it has some gothic elements to it. It seems more like gothic fantasy than straight up horror, but I'm hoping that it scratches that itch, and certainly the cover implies some kind of creepiness and edge to that story. All right, let's talk about books for this month. So again, some of these more fantasy themed, some of them more straight horror, but all of them at least with some feeling or some element of the spooky season. So we have Gideon the Ninth. Picked up Gideon the Ninth because it turns out that I've inadvertently read most of the Hugo Award nominees for this year, just like incidentally. And the sequel to this book is on that list as well. So I need to read through this one so I can read the sequel book, so I can have read all the Hugo Award winners or Hugo Award nominees for this year. And it deals with necromancy, so it seems like an appropriate thing to read during Halloween. I have Scary Stories for Young Foxes, which my wife read for the Summerween readathon a few months back and was recommending. It seems like it is, again, more aimed at children, but even my wife said there were a few things in here that were a little creepy. Definitely seems like a unique take on the horror short story anthology kind of book. So, and my wife assures me that it's a quick read, so that will be refreshing with all of these 400 and 500 page books that we've got this month. So I have Kill Creek, which I did not pick up. This one was another one of my wife's picks, but I mean, it's called Kill Creek, and I assume that means straight up horror, possibly leaning into more of the campy nature, which I do enjoy on occasion. So again, I know next to nothing about this. When we were compiling a list of horror books, my wife just brought it up as something that she had picked up and would maybe be a good one for this month, and I agreed, so it's on the list. All right. So next one is The Bonesmith. So this was the YA Fairy Loot book for August, I believe, and arrived pretty late, arrived early September. Yeah. Arrived pretty late, arrived early September, and so I've not had a chance to start this one up. I've not had a chance to read too much into it, but I do know that at least the workings of the magic here seem very dark, and if it's not, again, another necromancy story, it is adjacent to that kind of storytelling. So I'm looking forward to that and having a little bit of a fantasy element to break up some of these other just straight horror type stories. All right, I saved the last few because these are the ones I'm probably most excited about. I'm gonna have to wait on one for sure, and I'm going to make sure I don't start the month off with the other, just because I want to make sure that I get through a couple of books and have these to kind of motivate me. So I have Family Business by Jonathan Sims. So Jonathan Sims is the creator of the Magnus Archives. He also wrote 13 Stories, which was one of the standout books I read earlier this year. I think that might have been for Summerween as well. Just a fantastic short story collection where all the stories kind of blended into each other, and it reached a conclusion where all the characters were involved in the same finale, and that was very interesting to me. The story deals with someone who is working for a business that cleans up after the recently deceased, but then sinister things start happening. It all seems very vague, but in a very intriguing way. And so this is one that I'm very much looking forward to, probably second highest on my list for this month, which is why, again, I will not start the month with this. I'll put a couple others ahead of it so that I'm working toward getting this one to the table. All right, and then finally, probably the book that I'm most excited for this month is reading Subcutanean. So for those who don't know, Subcutanean is a book that is, I don't know how to describe it other than maybe procedurally generated, if you're familiar with that term from video games. So each copy of Subcutanean is different, It does follow roughly the same story, but no two printings of the book are exactly the same. There is a digital copy. If you read the digital copy, all the digital copies are the same. I believe there were 2 Twitter accounts that tweeted out the story. And if you read those are set numbers. I believe there might also be an audiobook and like a general copy that you can buy that are always the same number. So you can always get the same story with a handful of these. But if you go on to the publisher or the author's website, you can order copies that are unique to you. And what my wife and I have done is there's an option for getting 2 copies of the book. And the way that it works is it prints off 20 copies of each book, or it generates, doesn't print off, it generates 20 copies of each book and then picks the 2 from those 20 generated copies that are the farthest apart from one another, so that you can have fun experiencing the story as differently as possible from your partner who's reading with you. So I'm going to buddy read this with Amanda this month. It's highly likely that I will read the other copy either later this month or next month. And then depending on how much I enjoy reading these, if they feel different enough from one another, I may end up purchasing more copies and looking at this a number of times throughout the year next year. I'm very excited about it. I opened it up right away. I took a look at the very beginning of the book, and even the dedications at the beginning were slightly different. The page count is different. They both have epilogues. I was just flipping through. They both have epilogues, but one has like an alternate universe scene and the other one does not have that. So just so much about them, even on the surface level, just a quick glance, seems so completely different. And I'm so excited to finally have a copy and to be reading it. And so that is one that I'm incredibly excited about, but I have to hold myself back, partially, again, because I don't want to just blow through the books that I'm most excited about at the beginning of the month, but also because my wife is still reading through a couple of books at the moment, and she doesn't want to start up a new one until she's finished with what she's been reading. That is my TBR for the month of October. As always, I hope that your reading journey is going well. Please like, subscribe, comment down below. What are you planning to read for the month of October? Are there any spooky books that you would recommend? I'm almost certainly going to be picking up more. So if you have something that you'd like to recommend me, if you have something that really stood out to you in this genre, please let me know. I appreciate you guys helping us build this corner of our BookTube community. And until the next one, take care.